Page 26, drink to me only with thine eyes. An excerpt. An excerpt is just a little piece of the whole thing. In this lesson, they're introducing us to a contraption called a chord. This is another thing that people don't agree on, so let's just go over it and see. Whatever your teacher says is fine. While that's fine, but I'm going to teach it from my perspective. Now, I happen to agree with this book, but not everybody does. You see, some people say a chord is 2 or more notes played together, and other people say no, a chord is 3 or more notes played together. I don't care believe what you want. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't affect how you play it. To me, a chord is any time I can hear harmony. That's a chord, and I can hear harmony with 2 notes. And so that's it. They give some examples of chords up above. There's thousands of chords. Jazz chords uses different ones, and blues uses different ones. And we're going to stick with kind of the standard classical chords, just simple regular chords first, and then you can go off and get fancy later on if you want to. So in addition to reading both staffs at the same time, now you have to deal with more than one note in a staff at the same time. We'll get there. I'm going to go through the routine that I use to learn a piece of music, and I'll explain the chord in this piece when we get to it. I look it over. It's about a page long, more or less. I just want a general idea of how long it is. The clef signs are still treble and bass clef. The time signature is 3/4, so now there's only 3 counts in a measure, but we're still counting quarter notes. I see a bunch of quarter notes and half notes, dotted half notes. Now, since both hands are playing at the same time, I'm going to take this one hand at a time first to make sure I understand what each hand is doing, because a lot of times when I go to put the hands together, it's almost like starting over. Just ugh. So let's see what we get. In the right hand, they went 3rd finger on the E, and I'm assuming by now you know the names of the notes in the music instantly. You don't have to write them in the music to remind you. You just know what they are. If you don't, I encourage you to go back through the book and review everything and do the play and say it drills and drill yourself on the names of the notes. It's really, really, really important you know them and understand them. But as I said, that's an E. That's E. So that puts the hand here. C position, because C is the bottom note and that's the position. Now, when you get into music, you may be moving around, but that doesn't matter. I'm interested in where are we at the beginning, and we'll deal with anything else when we get to it. So we're here. Quarter notes. 1, 2, 3. Get the idea? Second line, last 2 measures, that is tied. You're going to hold that C down for 5 counts and then lift up for 1 count and you do it again. Okay, left hand. You're starting 5th finger here, that puts the hand here. So we're in C position down here, and it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, rest, 2, 1, 2. Second line, last measure. We got a dotted rhythm. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3. Remember, let's just briefly, because it's important you understand these rhythms. The E comes on beat 1. It's a quarter note. It takes up the whole beat. The dot comes on beat 2. And the dot is the same as half the quarter note or an 1/8 note. It's like a quarter note and an 1/8 note tied together. So the 8th note itself comes on the end of 2. 1 and 2 and 3. And that's as complicated as they get right there. That's it. 1 and 2 and 3. And I only do the 1 and 2 and when I need it. I don't do it throughout the whole thing. You could just estimate it. Make it a short note. The problem there is you're not going to be exact, and we need to be exact for now. So please count it out carefully to make sure that 8th note comes on the end of 2 and not someplace else. 1 and 2. Okay, then the last line. Let's look at this. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, and yikes, there's our chord. You're going to get this a lot. You're going to see these a lot, and eventually you'll just know what they are. But when you see a chord that you're not sure what it is, the standard procedure is spell out the chord. That means you start with the bottom note of the chord and figure it out, and then the next, and then the next, and the next, and the next. Because chord could have a whole lot of notes in it. You just take them one at a time and spell out the chord. So at the end, the last two measures, the bottom note is a C, and the top note there is an E. These two. So that's the chord. Now playing chords is a little bit different than playing single notes. The technique's a little bit different. Because in single notes, you just pass and wait from finger to finger. You're kind of walking on the piano. So, but when you start playing chords, things might change a little bit. Now in here, what we're going to do is we're going to pass weight from that finger, the F, the quarter note, to the E and the C and the E here. We are going to just transfer weight from that finger to those fingers. And that's just I don't know. The kicker here is, can you get the notes down at the same time? If you find that you're struggling with that and one note always seems to want to go down first, then focus on the other note. For instance, here, I keep playing this note first. Well, in that case, I'm going to focus on the E. I'm going to think about that and just let the little finger go along. That usually fixes it, usually. Take your time. Don't lift up to do this. Connect them. So put the hands together. Well, we're here again. C position is. And when I do this, I might hesitate. That's okay. I want here, and then here, and all quarter notes here, and then here. That F is by itself. The left hand has a rest. Get the idea? The last line, it's here. 1, 2, and then all together. Got 3 notes down together. Hopefully they went down at the same time. That's like a lifelong struggle, at least it is for me, to try and get notes down at the same time. And I've heard professionals not do it either. It's a struggle. Just be aware of it. Listen carefully and make sure those notes go down at the same time if possible. Now once I have the notes figured out and the rhythms and they're sort of working, then I go back over it carefully and I work out the hesitations. It has to be a steady beat. I can keep it slow. Speed is not important right now, but no hesitations. Also, I need to get to where I can play this without looking at the keyboard because we're not moving around. We want to develop that feel for the keyboard. Even when playing chords, you want to do that. Once I have that, I'll think about the articulation. Here they got the phrasing. If you want to do that, connect it. See, I lift up. That's fine if you want to. You'll notice in the 3rd and 4th measure, they have a little slur line while the first two. And the next measure, there's a little slur line there. That's because of the words. You see, normally when singing, they got words, you'd have a note for each word and sometimes each syllable of a word. Well, here on those measures, there's one word is doing both. You're going to sing with for both notes. And this is one way of notating it. They can put that in. The line after with is actually all you need. That tells you to hold with out for both notes. You don't really need the slur. You don't need that. Doesn't hurt having it in. I just want you to understand why it's there. It's there because of the words. You're singing the same word on both notes. Therefore, you're going to slur them together, but I'm going to slur them together anyway. Same thing in second line, first measure, you have that slur. Again, it's because of the word. You're singing the same word on both notes. Now, on the left hand, they don't show any articulation marks at all, which means it's entirely up to you. How do you want to do it? Well, today, the way we do things is the default, or what you do automatic first, is to just connect everything. It didn't used to be that way. Hundreds of years ago, the default was to put a little silence between them. 1, 2, way it used to be. Today we connect them. You have to lift up for the rest, of course. So that's what you do first. And then when you start getting into the interpretation part of it, you might decide to do it a little differently, because it's entirely up to you how you want to do it. So I'm going to connect the left hand, and it looks like I'm connecting the right hand except for the phrasing. Just like the end of the first line, I'm going to lift both hands for the phrase. Here is fine, but at the end of the second line, last two measures, so I'm connecting all this. I'm connecting that left hand all the way through. I have to lift up for the rest in the right hand. Yeah. My point in all this is that you're going to be lifting up in the hands differently a lot. You might lift them together, but you might not. And you need to be able to do either one. In this piece, it's not too bad because you're lifting up together in the first line, and the second line you have to lift the right hand as a rest. But you're connecting the left hand. So once I have the articulation sort of under control, I think about the dynamics. They have a P above the staff, and the P above the staff is there because they put words between the staff and it gets a bit crowded. So the P belongs between the staves, but it could be anywhere. The point is it applies to the melody wherever the melody is. Here the melody's in the right hand. This is going to be soft, piano for soft. This needs to be in the background, very soft. So I'm light in the right hand, and I'm very light in the left. Well, won't that be fun? That's the only dynamic they give you. Well, that's boring. Again, when you get into the interpretation side of it, you start feeling the music. If you feel it getting a little louder in places, go for it. Overall, it's soft, so you're staying in that area, but you might get a little louder and soft. Second line might come up there a little bit. For instance, in the beginning of the second line, maybe I get a little louder here, and then come down. Come down at the end of the phrase. Typically, we would come down at the end of a phrase. You shape the phrase. There's all kinds of ways of shaping phrase, but right now let's just think about coming down at the end of a phrase. So at the beginning. Now here, I would not come down here. Just go on. Now you come down. Each one gets a little softer and dies away, and then you start again. It's feeling. What do you feel it? If you don't feel it, don't play it then. If you feel it, put it in. Just keep the left hand out of the way. Speed. This is a fairly slow piece, actually. Just be aware that the more notes you have while you're playing at the same time, it tends to get a little louder. You have to be careful. So at the end, we want to hear the melody. Don't go play them all the same. No, these just drown out them. Keep these really soft. They're very light. Now, as far as the interpretation side goes, remember the natural accents. 1, 2, 3. The first beat of a measure every time. Exaggerate it if you have to. But we want to feel these. Just 1, 2, 3. However fast you're going. This is where you can experiment with it. Do you want to change anything? Do you want to do something different with the left hand? Maybe a... recommend it, but the point is you can do different things. Just experiment and see what you like. Now, I don't sing in my videos. Good Lord, they're hard enough as it is. If you want to sing, you go right ahead. It's up to you. To me, singing just adds a little more hardness difficulty to it, because now in addition to all the notes and everything, you got the words to deal with. Some people enjoy it very much, and if so, by all means, go for it. But as far as the lessons go, we don't sing. I don't sing. You might, I don't. Let's play this together very slowly and check the notes and the rhythms. I'll give us 3 counts. 1, ready, go. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1 and 2. 2. 2, 2, 3, tie, 2, rest.